"Dad, the song Greece sent to Eurovision is really good. Usually these kinds of songs are the ones that win this contest." "Yeah, but you know what?" I tell her. "Australia suddenly passed us in the odds today, and Finland is already the favorite." "Nah," she tells me, "those two won't win. They don't stand a chance. But there's this other song I liked. It's one that goes bangaranga or something like that. I think it's Bulgaria," my little girl says. Well, that was the first time I had heard about Bulgaria's song in this year's Eurovision. When the day of the final arrived, I figured I'd sit down, listen to 4 or 5 of the top favorites, and check out how the betting odds were moving. That's something I used to do for years, when I made a living from gambling. Up until that moment, my only contact with Eurovision had been during a live stream I did with my friend Yorgos on our Greek podcast. Even then, I hadn't listened to any songs other than the one by Aquila that we sent to represent Greece. Although we talked about predictions and which countries we thought were most likely to win, we focused more on the rationale behind placing bets, the logic I follow when choosing where to risk my money. And the truth is, that logic is very simple. During the livestream, some listeners were asking in the comments which country I would pick. Generally, I avoided answering because I didn't want to give the wrong impression or have someone take my answer out of context without me explaining why I said what I said. But they kept pressing me to name at least 3 countries that I thought had a better shot, so to speak. I told them it doesn't matter at all which ones I think might win. Instead, 2 things matter way more. First, how high the betting odds are, and second, what the psychology of the people betting on Eurovision is showing. And that is very easy to understand just by watching how the odds move. When I used to gamble, I never really cared about what I was betting on. Sometimes I didn't even know how the sports were played. For example, I bet on horse racing for a long time without even knowing the horses jumped over hurdles. It was the same with Eurovision. I didn't know how the voting worked or which songs were actually good. I didn't know there was a jury or televoting or what the ratio between them was. I didn't know how the system worked, and I hadn't even really heard the songs until then. Basically, I hadn't heard them at all. But that didn't stop me from assessing Bulgaria's probability of winning. So, how did I find the probability of Bulgaria winning? That's the million-dollar question. What's the probability of an event happening? Everyone has their own strategies, and everyone estimates it differently. The only definite answer we can all agree on is flipping a perfect coin, heads or tails, which has a 50% probability. That right there is the example I often use to explain my various betting theories. So how did I calculate Bulgaria's probability the same way we calculate a coin flip? I just looked at the betting odds. In various university studies I've read over the decades I've been involved in gambling, as well as studies published by the world's leading betting companies themselves, the true probability of an event tends to reflect the implied probability of the betting odds right before the event begins. Whether it's a soccer match or a song contest, the closing odds reveal the true probability. In other words, it's the wisdom of the crowd that finds the true probability. A few hours before the Eurovision Grand Final, I sat down to see how the odds were moving, and I noticed that Bulgaria's odds had suddenly started dropping. When the odds drop, it means the probability of winning is going up. Now all I had to do was find odds that justified a wager, odds that, as we say, had value. It didn't take long to find a betting company that was being very generous, offering a Bulgarian victory at 25-1 odds. Meanwhile, at most other bookmakers, the odds had already plummeted to around 10-1, meaning the crowd placed their probability around 8%. I had to act fast and place the bet before the odds changed, before the company corrected its mistake and the opportunity vanished. So I bet 10 euros on Bulgaria to win. Wait, you only played 10 euros? Well, you see, how much money someone bets depends exclusively on the bankroll they have set aside for gambling and risking on games of chance. Just like I have an investment portfolio for stocks and other assets, I keep a dedicated bankroll just for gambling, while trying to make it as little about luck as possible. But lately, I've been in a bit of damage control situation. My professional life took a downward turn, and because I'm trying to minimize my expenses, I've been forced to heavily reduce the capital I use to risk on these kinds of opportunities. And I do mean risk because an 8% probability means that 92 times out of 100 I will lose this bet, even if it was mathematically correct to place it. It's what they call play right and lose. In the past, I might have had 10 grand available, allowing me to bet 100 euros on Bulgaria, which is 1% of my bankroll, which is the maximum I allow myself to risk. But this time, due to financial tightness, the bet was much smaller. This financial crutch doesn't exactly help you get back on your feet, even on a winning bet like this one turned out to be. Because realistically, even though the odds were 25 to 1, my actual expected profit wasn't 250 euros. With an 8% chance of winning at 25 to 1 odds, the math says my expected return is 100% of my stake. Now, how do you get that? You just multiply the odds by the estimated probability, $25 times 8%, and subtract 1. Anything above 1 is your expected value. In this case, 25 times 0.08 equals 2, minus 1 equals 1. That means 100% return on my stake. To look at the real numbers of what happens, I have an 8% chance to win 240 euros, minus a 92% chance that I will lose my 10 euro stake. 8% times 240 euros minus 92% times 10 equals 20 minus 10 equals 10 euros. So my expected profit from this bet was a mere 10 euros. Even though I happened to win this time, since of course I will win 8 out of 100 times playing an identical bet, it all depended on the wisdom of the crowd being right and keeping those odds at 10 to 1 minutes before Eurovision started. That was actually my biggest anxiety at the time, whether the market was right and if the odds would hold steady before the final began. The extra 240 euros I won on this specific bet is essentially a cushion. It's money that will allow me to sustain bad luck on future properly calculated bets. Because I do expect to lose an identical bet 92 times out of 100. I would need 920 euros set aside just to weather the storm and hit the next 6 or 7 wins that the math says I should eventually get. I learned all of this after more than 20 years in the gambling industry, and I can't wait to teach it to my daughter. But for now, I'm not going to tell her that her prediction made me money. And the reason is simple. Throughout my career, I've seen so many people destroyed by gambling. Even people who knew exactly how the mathematics worked couldn't control their passion for fast money. I don't want my little girl getting the wrong impression that you can make easy money from betting. Not at all. She might think, hey, I told Dad Bulgaria would win and we made 250 euros. That would be a massive mistake because it's so easy to get carried away and think that gambling is easy money. It is anything but easy. The profit is just the tip of the iceberg. Until I can explain to her exactly how the whole system works behind the screen, and until she shows she truly understands all the hidden work beneath the surface, I don't want to give her a false reality about the gambling world. What I did tell her the next morning though, when she saw the results, was how well she's starting to understand music. And it was true. Without her, I would have never even listened to Bulgaria's song. I told her that thanks to the knowledge she's developing, she was able to predict the future a little bit. And if you can predict the future, just like in chess, you will always have a job. Being able to anticipate what comes next is a profession that has existed for centuries and will exist forever. Whether it's in an industry, a business, in gambling, or even in your own life, like tracking your health or your family's finances, it's an invaluable skill. And as she was listening to me, clearly excited about what I was saying, she turned to me and said, "See, you should have bet on it."